Prominent members of Donald Trump's own party are coming out and publicly endorsing President Biden for re-election, and we need to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video, and one of which is pretty long, but I think it's worth every second. So as you know, I referred to the Republican Party as an authoritarian cult of personality, and I'm perfectly willing to defend that characterization. I think it's true. But as is often the case, I'm not literally referring to every single Republican in existence. There are principled conservatives out there, even though I wildly disagree with them about those principles and certainly about the policies they propose. There are people out there who have taken the very brave stance of separating, emancipating themselves from this cult and are not only criticizing Trump, but are now explicitly endorsing the only viable opponent, the only viable alternative to Trump, which is President Biden. Before I give you some examples, I want to show you this call to action from the Lincoln Project, which is a prominent anti-Trump coalition of Republicans. They put out this minute-long ad basically trying to spur Republicans into action, find their courage, find their backbone, and stand up to Trump and his fascism. So we'll play this, and then we'll get into specific examples. Two major Republicans who have come out and endorsed President Biden today.
Millions of Republicans, more all the time, are feeling the pressure to vote for the party, to toe the line, to pull the lever the way you always did before. Maybe the way your parents did too. It used to make sense. It used to be easy, because it used to be the party that said character mattered. The party that was for the family. The party that believed in the vision of the founders. The party of law and order. The party of rugged individualism. The party that would never vote for a criminal. But with or without the verdict, we all knew that's exactly what Donald Trump is, a criminal. When did conservative values become about one man? When did faith go from looking upward to looking the other way? Donald Trump doesn't represent the party of Lincoln. He's not the inheritor of Reagan's legacy. Donald Trump is a virus that has torn our party to shreds. It's time to save the Republican Party by voting against it.
Very compelling ad, I think, for any sane person. Unfortunately, I think most of the Republican politicians will not heed its call, even if I imagine many of them quietly agree with it. They've demonstrated that they're much too afraid of Donald Trump to do anything like that. However, there is, I don't know if you would consider him a household name, but he is a very prominent former Republican congressman by the name of Adam Kinzinger. And I do want to show you this clip. I don't know if I'll show you the clip first, okay, of him endorsing President Biden, not just criticizing Trump, not just trying to hold Trump accountable, but him coming out and explicitly endorsing President Biden. And then I want to remind people, just in case there happens to be a pro-Trump person watching, unlikely, but possible. If you are, hi, please be sure to like and subscribe. But to remind people of Kinzinger's pro-Trump Republican bona fides in the past.
I'm Adam Kinzinger, and I'm a proud conservative. I always have been. As a proud conservative, I've always put democracy and our Constitution above all else. And it's because of my unwavering support for democracy that today, as a proud conservative, I'm endorsing Joe Biden for re-election. My entire life has been guided by the conviction that America is a beacon of freedom, liberty, and democracy. So while I certainly don't agree with President Biden on everything, and I never thought I'd be endorsing a Democrat for president, I know that he will always protect the very thing that makes America the best country in the world, our democracy. Donald Trump poses a direct threat to every fundamental American value. He doesn't care about our country. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about himself. And he'll hurt anyone or anything in pursuit of power. We saw that when he tried to overturn an election that he knew he lost in 2020. He attacked the foundation of this nation, encouraging a violent mob of his supporters to march on the Capitol to prevent the peaceful transition of power. Now he's become even more dangerous. He's called for termination of the Constitution. He wants to be a dictator on day one. He actually said that. And he's continuing to stoke the flames of political violence. There's too much at stake to sit on the sidelines. So to every American of every political party, and those of none, I say now is not the time to watch quietly as Donald Trump threatens the future of America. Now's the time to unite behind Joe Biden and show Donald Trump off the stage once and for all.
Great from Adam Kinzinger. It really is. Now, of course, because much of the Republican Party is an authoritarian cult. They'll say, yeah, but Kinzinger's a rhino. He's a Republican in name only. Well, as Kinzinger would say, actually, Republicans were supposed to be the political proxy of principled conservatives who supported the principles that Kinzinger laid out. I would argue, and he would argue, that the real rhinos are those who would forsake all of that on the altar of Donald Trump's cult. You all are the real rhinos because you don't care about conservative principles, because Trump himself is not a conservative. Again, he's an ideologically inconsistent, malignant narcissist. He's too stupid and uneducated to have political principles. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He just knows only his own aggrandizement. And he's persuaded tens of millions of people that's the Republican Party. To be a Republican is to be a Trump cultist in Trump's mind. Kinzinger says, no, actually, that's not the case. But regardless, I say this to the facts don't care about your feelings, gang. The facts are that Adam Kinzinger, when he was a Republican congressman and Donald Trump was president, he voted overwhelmingly with Trump's agenda. 90% of the time. 90% of the time, friends. 83% in the 116th Congress. In the 115th Congress, 99% of the time. That is an overwhelming majority. That's how loyal he was to his party and to Trump. This was not a never-Trumper. This was a devout pro-Trumper who eventually was persuaded to turn against him after Donald Trump's fascism became more manifest that even Kinzinger couldn't ignore it. You might think to yourself, okay, well, what's that compared to? Consider Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, during the time that Kinzinger was in office and Trump was in office, only 81% and only 89%. Kinzinger has a better pro-Trump agenda when you consider when Kinzinger was in office than Matt Gaetz. Jim Jordan only voted with Trump 85% of the time in the 115th Congress and 92% of the time in the 116th Congress. So even there, the aggregate score for Adam Kinzinger is better than Gaetz or Jim Jordan. Think about that. So again, anyone who says that Kinzinger is a never-Trump rhino is either stupid or lying. That's it. They lose the debate. The facts are not on their side. The facts don't care about your feelings, gang. But he's not alone. There's also Geoff Duncan, the former lieutenant governor of Georgia. Okay, somebody who was there when Donald Trump was actively pressuring Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger during the 2020 election cycle to find me 11,780 votes. Geez, guys, I just need one more than what Biden has. Pressuring them to try to help him steal a free and fair election from the rightful winner, Joe Biden. This is a 4-minute clip. I do want you to hear it because it's really, really good. And he makes a pretty compelling case, Geoff Duncan, as to why he, like Kinzinger, who was actually there at the time that he gave the speech, why he is also endorsing President Biden.
It's great to be back in the People's House. There are so many great memories I have in this building. I served nearly 10 years in a couple of different capacities. And I couldn't help but think when I walked in the door, the time that I spent in the House, walked in 2013, representing an 80-20 district in Forsyth County. That's 80% Republican district in Forsyth County, and learning the process of how to pass a bill, working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to take on organized crime, to help rural hospitals. Then I think about the time that I decided to run for lieutenant governor. And many people in this state said I was too conservative to actually be a statewide elected official. But by the grace of God, we won that election, and we worked for 4 tough years. We worked across the aisle, worked with Leader Butler and others to bring meaningful legislation forward. We passed over 50 bipartisan health care bills. We took on COVID reform, and we passed a very important hate crimes piece of legislation. There's also some tough memories in this building I've got. We were second guessed on COVID almost every minute of every day from the White House, specifically Donald Trump. Lies, conspiracy theories around the 2020 election, so much so that I had to have armed guards around my office and my home, around my family, just to fight off the fact I didn't admit that the election was rigged, because it wasn't. Fake electors sat just a few feet from us, sat in a room and tried to usurp democracy. And then the unfortunate events of January 6th showed up, and sitting in this building watching those events play out were a huge part of why I'm standing here today. All of those tough memories seem to track back to one person and one person only, and that's Donald Trump. Going against the grain as a Republican and supporting Democrat Joe Biden for president is not easy. But I'm not looking at this election through the lens of being a Republican. I'm looking through the lens of being an American that cares more about the future of my country than the moral bankrupt nominee of my party. There are political ramifications to this decision, but they pale in comparison to 4 more years of Donald Trump, both home and abroad. Let me speak directly to the millions of Republicans across the country who are tired of making excuses for Donald Trump's behavior at their churches, in their offices, and at their own kitchen tables. Enough is enough. The nightmare has to end, and it has to end now. It's time for us to purge Donald Trump from our system. Let's take the next 4 years as Republicans and build and heal a new party, a GOP 2.0, a party that finds leaders that are willing to embrace conservative principles and work across the aisle, leaders that understand the value of civility and compromise, that once again value honesty and integrity, a party that uses policy, empathy, and tone to work across that aisle, to gain majorities, to talk about issues, use it as our North Star. The last 4 years have been difficult for our family, the journey, but a journey that's been worth traveling. There have been so many folks over the last 4 years, nearly 4 years, Republicans specifically, that have come up and offered words of encouragement, that have quietly sent notes, have praised the notion of saying and doing the right thing. It's my time to ask a favor of all those thousands and thousands of Republicans across the country who've given us words of encouragement. I have an ask. My ask is this: it is your time to do the right thing. Don't give Donald Trump 4 more years to continue to destroy this country.
Very compelling stuff. That's one of the best speeches I've heard because it's so personal. You know, he's talking about his history as a Republican, working for, again, conservative principles, also working in good faith and bipartisanly when necessary with the opposition. And then he's talking about the guy who came in like a wrecking ball and destroyed the whole thing. He's using the juxtaposition, the contrast to make a very compelling case. And again, what I like about this and what I like about what Kinzinger's doing as well is that he's not just criticizing Trump, which is important. And it's also brave because, again, there's a reason that these two, young, popular conservatives or formerly popular conservatives are no longer in office because they were punished by their party for speaking out against the cult leader. They're doing it anyway. And they're actually taking it a step further and saying, listen, we put country above party leader. That is the precise order that this should be. You should never put party leader above country. Your country should always come first. And the current iteration of the GOP has it backwards. And so rather than create a false balance or, a false equivalence to try to justify inaction, they're instead saying, no, listen, I'm going to back President Biden enthusiastically, and I encourage you all to do so as well. Will it be effective? I don't know. Nikki Haley, who represents, I think, the largest bloc besides Trump of Republican voters in this, the primary race in particular, she bent the knee. She cravenly bent the knee despite her frequent criticism of Trump as well. So this is kind of like an appeal to Nikki Haley voters. Like, hey, don't do what Nikki Haley did. Actually prove that you love your country more than your party's leader or even your party, and vote for the guy who will keep American democracy alive. And again, they don't mince their words about it. They're not saying we're enthusiastically supporting every policy proposal of President Biden. But again, at the end of the day, country comes before party, which in turn should come before party leader. Very brave stuff. I hope we will see some Republican politicians who are in office do that, but I doubt it. Maybe you disagree. Let me know what you think in the comments.